Hi, welcome to another episode of the TPF podcast. My name is Khris Simonich, and my partner here is Andrea Floyd. And on this podcast, we try to deconstruct the best practices of some of the industry's top performers. Today, we have founder, and if I'm getting the title right, is it still Chief Hunter, Andy?
Chief Hunter.
All right, Chief Hunter, Andy Fuller of Mosquito Hunters and Humbug Holiday Lighting. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks. This is great, Andy. I know I got the benefit of spending, a whole dinner with you in Nashville last month. So I heard this whole story, but tell our listeners, how did Mosquito Hunters originate? What's the story behind that?
So Mosquito Hunters started with me working in corporate America, being very frustrated. I realized I did not want to spend the rest of my life and my career working in corporate America, jumping through hoops and kissing the right pinky rings and just playing the sort of corporate politics that I think a lot of your clients seem to be familiar with. I naively thought that going into corporate America would be a lot like my experience in college, where I ran a college painting business. And I thought it'll be just like that. We'll be building stuff all the time, and we'll just have billions of dollars of resources that we can work with. So just imagine the things that we can build. And then, of course, a year into it, I realized I hate this. It's all about doing as little work as possible, getting your bonus, getting work off of your desk, pointing fingers, making sure you don't get blamed, making sure you don't make a mistake. The worst thing anybody can do is make a mistake, which means that nobody takes any risks and nothing ever really gets built. And it just wasn't for me. And so I realized I have to get back to kind of who I am and what I want out of my career, and that is to build things. And the best way to build things is to start your own business. So I knew I had to start my own business. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I felt like I was kind of done on painting. I'd already kind of closed that chapter. I was interested in something that was recurring revenue. But I also knew from the painting experience that home services was a great space because it had great profit margins, gross profit margins, meant that you could take some big swings, take some risks, of course, have better net profit margins. But I wanted something that was recurring revenue. I wanted something that was a little bit newer, something that was opportunity to differentiate and not just try to come up with the lowest price in town, something where I could learn enough to be dangerous within a reasonably short period of time and not have to go back to trade school or go to trade school or take on some sort of apprenticeship somewhere. I wanted something where I could take pride in the work that we were doing. And that just led me to Mosquito Hunters because it checked all of those boxes better than anything else could. I didn't have any, family or friends in the pest control space or like a deep-seated hatred for mosquitoes. I guess it's like a love-hate relationship, I guess. But yeah, it checked those boxes and just enabled me to have the kind of career I wanted to have better than any other medium could.
Well, I know I've heard you say that nobody likes mosquitoes, right? So that's a good start. But you've got some great stories about what it was like to really start that. And I think it's important to talk about that because it's so different than what your franchisees experience now when they go into business for themselves. So talk a little bit about, okay, so I'm Andy Fuller. I'm working the corporate job. I decide to go into business. I decide I'm going to get into this mosquito control business. What was that like that first year, 2 years? Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's, Khris. It was a lot of Superman sprays. That was the expression I used to use. So I would be wearing my suit, going to a corporate meeting, normally in the northern suburbs of Chicago. And that meeting would wrap up. I would go down the street to McDonald's. I would change out of my suit. I would put on my Mosquito Hunters technician uniform because the treatment had to get done that day for the customer, and the guy who was supposed to do the treatment had the day off or whatever. I performed the treatment. 45 minutes later, I'm back in the next meeting with my suit on it because I had to do the quick change. So that was the summer of Superman sprays. I had to do a few of those.
Did you have glasses? I'm trying to picture this. Was there glasses involved?
I didn't have glasses. Had maybe some goggles. Picture that.
There you go.
So I put on the goggles to do it. But yeah, no, that was the first summer. I had my first two technicians were just my buddies from high school. they had full-time jobs and they would just help me out, anytime that they could. And then as we got more and more customers and they became full-time employees. But during that little transition where it's like, hey, we don't have any customers. I don't know exactly how to get them. I don't know where they're going to come from, but we're just going to try our best. So just that process of learning, how do you explain the value proposition? What's the best tactic for getting a customer? Like the first day, I literally went door to door in Northbrook, Illinois, offering services for free. And just imagine this, like you start your own business and you're like, all right, I need to get some customers. I'm literally giving it away. And the majority of people were like, nah.
Right.
This
So
isn't-
you're
getting something for free, like I've come to learn, that doesn't really work. Even if I'm charging $1, people will assign more value to it. So, but it was just a lot of learnings like that along the way, just trying things out. I call it like Roomba entrepreneurship. Like a Roomba just bumps into the wall, turns a little bit, bumps into the wall, turns a little bit. Eventually, the Roomba starts to figure out the most efficient way to clean the room. That's kind of how it is when you start a business without like a franchise.
Yeah, I feel bad for your franchisees when they complain about something. You're like, back in my day, right?
Yeah, we were doing Superman sprays.
Right. We didn't have things like marketing, right? Yeah, we didn't have a plan.
That's true.
Andy, I typically we don't want to get too deep in the technical, but I do think for anybody listening, they do need to, for some folks, they do need to understand the actual business model here, because I always felt for your business, the key to it all was that what you spray to keep mosquitoes away, it actually works, right?
Yes.
So can you just talk a little bit about what you're spraying, how often you're spraying, a little bit about the business model, just for our listeners?
So our model is, for the mosquito control portion, is that we come out from when the season starts to when the season ends. So in a place like where I live, Chicago, that's from, and where you live, Khris, it's from early April through about mid to late October. And then the further south you go to a place like Jacksonville, Florida, Andrea, that could be more like 11 months out of the year, but it's going to be on the 2 to 3 week cycle for these treatments for mosquito control. The product that's being applied is the synthetic of the organic compound found in the chrysanthemum flower. It's called a pyrethroid. Same thing that's found in flea and tick shampoos that we'd use on our pets. Same thing that's found in head lice medications that we apply to our kids' scalps if ever they unfortunately get lice. Like that's the same thing that we're applying to the plants. So the mosquitoes bite us for our blood, but it's only the females that bite us because the mosquito is literally a parasite. But the female bites us for our blood, not for energy purposes, but just for reproductive purposes. The energy comes from the plants. So all the plant nectar is the food source. That's literally the food source for the mosquito. We're treating the plants to cut out the food source, so that way the mosquitoes need to go someplace else. Because if they can't have food in your yard, then they're not going to be around to bite you. So that's how it works. And then we come back on a 2 to 3 week cycle to reapply. And we say, one of our core values is we're not in the mosquito business, we're in the loyalty business, meaning we need to earn the loyalty of the customer. Because it's not a question of if the mosquitoes are going to be back next year or the year after that or the year after that. The mosquitoes have been around since the dinosaur era, Khris. They are coming back. The question is, what can you do as a business owner to increase the probability that your customer is going to rely on you to solve their problem next year when they have it? So we need to be focused as business owners on earning the loyalty of customers, not trying to focus on, hey, we kill more mosquitoes than the next guy. Earn their loyalty at every interaction by providing the best experience. That way we can provide a more valuable business with recurring revenue.
Yeah. And I mean, Andy, you hit on this before a little bit about, you worked out all the kinks during your Superman time and figured that all out for the franchisees. You got it up and running. They're going to have a much easier time coming into this. So the marketing, how to hire people, all these different pieces. You've now then taken Mosquito Hunters and you've joined Happynest Brands, which is a larger family of brands. How did that decision come about, and what are you getting out of that, and what should the franchisees, what's the benefit to them?
I think it was kind of a no-brainer after getting to know the people at Happynest and how much they believe in supporting founders and their visions. I know you guys know Chris Stonis with Sparkle Squad. A similar story with him is, he has a very clear vision on where he wants his brand to be. And Happiness are the perfect collaborators. They're great integrators, people who help founders make their visions a reality. And I saw that early on. So Lawn Doctor is another brand that's there. We're able to leverage a lot of their learnings, being 55 plus years in the home services space. EcoMaids is another that's part of that family. That's also enabled us to do something that no one has ever really seen in the mosquito control space. So we don't just treat for mosquitoes. We're a pest control company and we're a holiday lighting company as well. So we can integrate 3 different discrete service lines into one franchise model. And that's something really special for our business owners, is because you can take a seasonal business, which has lots of pros and also some cons as well, but get the best of both worlds because you can offset the seasonality with peaks throughout the season. So in other words, you can have 12 months of revenue with different service lines and keep the same employees using the same trucks. So a lot of that goes back to your question of like, why Happynest? Happynest has kind of enabled that sort of simplicity and keeping something simple while also providing a lot more upside and a lot more opportunity. Another thing that we did very early on, right after partnering, was we created an in-house call center. And that in-house call center quotes and closes on an owner's behalf. So the owner still needs to know how to sell, and sales is just, we like to say everybody's in the sales department. So the owners are in the sales department, the technicians are in the sales department. If you have an assistant or a customer service representative, everybody should be trained on how to sell. But our in-house call center, we call it the dojo. That's your first line of defense to quote and close on your behalf. So that way you have more time and energy to focus on providing a better experience for customers. That's just one example of some of the things that we couldn't do. We couldn't provide our franchisees if we were just independent the way we were originally. We have an in-house marketing team that works with top 25 nationally ranked agencies, marketing agencies that wouldn't return our calls if we were independent because we're too small. And as independent owners, or even just Mosquito Hunters overall, we've got 130 locations. We're still not large enough to work with some of these agencies. But when we combine our footprint with Lawn Doctor's footprint, with EcoMaid's footprint, with Sparkle Squad's footprint, we're able to spend millions of dollars every year, and we can work with top ranked marketing agencies who are experts in their field. So we don't just work with generalists, which is what you see normally in franchising. Is you'll get connected with this company will handle your SEO and your PPC and your Facebook marketing and your Instagram marketing, etc. We work with the best in breed for each one of these specialized spaces so we can get better lift. We actually spend less on commissions because of that as well. So you get a better ROI out of your marketing and you're spending less on commissions. So it means you just have more money to go towards getting more customers. That's another thing. Like, we could not do that if we were by ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a comment to that, Andy, then I have a follow-up question, but I think everybody really needs to hear what you just said, because it's a different game than it was even 10 years ago. Meaning, and you just have to realize the state of the game. You can be sad about it. You go like, the good old days. But the reality is, a guy like Andy Fuller 10 years ago who was changing costumes in the McDonald's bathroom, but then maybe going home at night and going, I'm going to teach myself Google AdWords to figure this out. Like, you can't compete anymore.
No.
Because you're competing against Mosquito Hunter franchisees who, because of the economies of scale purchasing of Happynest, are dealing with, these major marketing agencies. Like, you got no shot.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of it.
The customer acquisition cost is skyrocketing for the independent business owner because it's a full-time contact sport. There's no way, like you said, like the good old days where you can, do a Valpak and put out just some lawn signs and just wait for the phone calls to come in. It doesn't happen. It needs to be an integrated strategic approach that includes the best of breed from digital, some direct mail, lots of ground game, and those things need to work together in confluence.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about, you've got the marketing department, you've got the dojo, the call center. So if I'm hearing this and picturing myself as a Mosquito Hunters franchisee, that means I just got to have a marketing budget. I let Happynest spend the money. and I just kick my feet up on the desk and wait for the phone to ring, and the phone rings and the dojo answers it, right? Or am I missing something here?
Wrong, Khris. Wrong.
So where are we wrong?
So it's a simple model. It's not easy, but it's simple. That's what we tell our franchisees, and we try to keep it as simple as possible, but it will never be easy. Starting a business is going to be hard work, and the hard work for a franchisee lies in the local level sales and lies in executing what we call ground game. So that's a lot of door hangers, minimum 10,000 within your power window, which is like a 10-week period when you're going to be generating a lot of your mosquito revenue. It's going to be putting out over 500 lawn signs. It's going to be executing at least 20 hours of parking waves using our cool Gunther mascot. This is the real Gunther mascot of that guy there. It's getting lots and lots of Google reviews, minimum 50, in some cases even more. And we've got some really good tactics to help streamline that for owners. But these are the things that are going to drop down your customer acquisition cost. In some cases, like for example, the parking wave. If you have somebody standing on a busy street corner wearing the mascot, and by the way, we'll work with you so that way you can find the best intersection to stand at where you're going to get the most eyeballs. But like, let's say you're doing that, right? Which that's what you need to do. Like when you're starting this, people are going to drive by that mascot and say, "Oh, honey, grab the phone. We got to call Mosquito Hunters right now." But what that does is it creates familiarity with the brand, and it creates trust inherently. So that way, when somebody does have a need, that familiarity switch fires off in the person's brain. So that way they say, "Oh yeah, I know them. I don't need to look further. I'm going to call that number. I'm going to fill out that lead form on the website." It breeds that familiarity. So that way we can drive down the customer acquisition cost. Because that's the game, is we're trying to drive down the customer acquisition cost and then extend the lifetime value of the customer. So if the franchisee is doing all that real hard work with the ground game, all of the stuff they're spending money on with us, with the digital marketing, with direct mail, et cetera, that's going to be less expensive thanks to their ground game work that they're doing locally. So it's definitely a team effort.
That's great. And you're using these icons, these character Gunther, to really sort of drive the marketing, have someone remember your image. And I think you also have a newer character to the market with the Humbug lights, right? And so tell us a little bit about that, and tell us about Humbug lights. I think you hit on that a little bit in that 3-for-1 model that you're expanding, so that especially places that are seasonal have something all year where they can keep, their employees all year. Tell us a little bit about how that's working and why you brought that in. Oh,
You want to see something cool?
Yeah, we want to see it. Look at that.
In fact, we'll put this Humbug holiday lighting. This is
Love it. That's Scrooge?
That is Scrooge.
Love that.
So imagine all your best technicians from the mosquito control business and from the pest control business having work in October, November, December. Now, I mentioned earlier the seasonality of mosquito control and pest control will vary based on where you're at in the country. What I love so much about holiday lighting is holidays come on time, no matter where you are or no matter what the weather is like that year. The holidays come on time, and so there's really consistent, reliable demand. It is an excellent business model. The biggest downfall of holiday lights traditionally is that it's hyper seasonal. But what if you had another business line that kept you plenty busy all the other months out of the year? Well, with us, you do. And it happens to fit in perfectly, because normally when you're just in mosquito control or pest control, you start to see a serious slowdown period, October, November, December, and that's when Humbug is busiest. So it's a great complement. The profitability is excellent. Our model is that the owner owns the lights. The customer does not own the lights. So effectively, the owner is the lights to the customer. And so we're more of a decorator, designer. We install, we maintain, we take down, we store, meaning the owner does all of this during the off season. And then there's a material cost in year one and a charge to the customer. But in year two, there is no material cost. Nominal, if anything. We're talking some zip ties or maybe a few extra clips. So that just added 30% to the bottom line for the business owner. And so then the year after that, and the year after that, the year after that, if you use the right quality lights, which of course we have some recommendations for our owners, you can be going 4, 5, 6 years before you have to start replacing some of the lights, which means a very profitable service line when you're in Humbug holiday lighting.
That's great. That's great. And you've mentioned having salespeople, everybody's a salesperson. So even your technicians, they're out sort of, wearing some of those characters too, helping you market the business and then, bringing people in.
Absolutely. And I'd say that where it's so important for technicians is having that trust and familiarity with the customer. Like instead of just the familiarity of the brand, like familiarity just person to person. Like, hey, I know Peter, because Peter always comes out to our house. He's our technician. So for pest control, it's, hey, I noticed there were spider webs in the back. We can help with spider control. Here's how. Okay, well, if you say so, Peter, now that you just upsold, perimeter pest control services for that customer. Or if it's Peter, the same guy who's back on the job to do the holiday lighting install in, let's say, late October. Okay, Mrs. Jones, she's signed up to have lighting installed along the peaks and along the fascia, along the gutter lines. I couldn't help but notice up at those peaks, there's a blank spot on each one of those. I think a wreath would look great. And we just so happen to have a couple of wreaths in the truck. Here's what the pricing would be. Well, okay, yeah, that's a good idea, Peter. Let's do that. It's an extra $600 for the wreaths. Those are the sorts of ways it really pays to train your technicians to know how to sell.
Yeah. So hitting on, the kind of employee that you're looking for and really focus on bringing in the right employee. How do you help the franchisees find those people?
I think you need to have an avatar, and it's a unit level decision. It's up to the owner to decide who they want to hire and who they don't want to hire. But we can share a lot of learnings from our own firsthand experiences and lots of secondhand experiences from all the franchisees we work with. We know that there are certain kinds of employees who really work well with autonomy, and it creates win-wins. There's certain pay structures and bonus structures that have worked well for a lot of other owners. So owners share these structures with each other. They share these payment models with each other. So that way they can incentivize the right kind of behaviors. And so when you have pay for performance, it really motivates some types of candidates, and it really turns away some other types of candidates. Like you can picture, we all have known the kind of guy who's looking to do just enough work to not get fired. That type of guy is not going to work well, or he's not going to be attracted to a model where he's paid by performance. He's going to say, no, I want lots of pay regardless of, I want a high hourly amount. I want no bonuses. I want to be guaranteed payment regardless of how I perform. That's not typically what we see out of the best performers. We see the performers who want variable compensation that increases when certain metrics and KPIs are built and met.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
So what's your avatar for a franchisee?
A franchisee who is perfect for us is somebody who wants to build an empire. So not somebody who's looking to get into pest control or mosquito control as a hobby. Not somebody who's looking to put on the backpack and do their treatments, in their spare time. We want to work with owners who want to build big businesses. And there's a real opportunity for someone who likes leading, who likes finding talent, curating that talent, creating a sense of camaraderie among local technicians, customer service representative, other staff members. Those are the ones who really thrive in this system, who set aggressive goals, who challenge themselves, who are more inclined to look in the mirror than they are to point fingers at things that are outside of their control. Those are the ones who've had the most success in our system. And so now we have the benefit of doing this for so many years. We've seen over and over who the best franchise owners are, and we've seen who the average are, and we've seen who the poor performers are. And so we know we just want more of the best, because it's just everybody wins when that happens. And so that's exactly who that is, who the best are. You look at our top 33% of franchisees, they fit the mold of exactly what I just described. People who want to build empires.
Yeah. Andrea, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, we have time.
All right. Andy, and I think this is important not only for anybody who might be considering Mosquito Hunters and Holiday Humbug Lighting, but really anybody looking at a franchise. You've always had a really great way of explaining how somebody seriously considering franchising should see the franchisor-franchisee relationship and what it is, and just as importantly, what it is not, right? So can I
Yeah,
put you on the spot and have you explain that for the audience?
sure. I think this is one that there's not one answer, but to me, it's a pretty clear answer. But you'll talk to different people in franchising. You'll hear this. This will be perceived different ways from different lenses. Now, for me, it's very simple. It's called a franchisee-franchisor relationship for a reason, and it has its own name because it's its own thing. So when you're a franchisee in our system, you're not our customer. We are not your vendor. You're not our employee. We're not your boss. You are our franchisee and we're your franchisor. And it has its own name because it's its own thing. And the closest analogy I could come up with is the Sherpa. So if you were to go climb Mount Everest and you've never done it before, unless you're crazy, you'd probably hire a Sherpa. And so that's what we're like for you. We will go up that mountain with you side by side. And the difference between us and you is simply we've just done it a lot of times. You probably have plenty of other skills that you're bringing to the experience, a lot of things that we can learn from you. But what we bring to the table is that we've done this many, many times. So we can go up that mountain together and we could say, well, we don't want to go that way because there's a really steep drop off and we could fall and, hurt ourselves. We don't want to go that way because it gets really icy. That's dangerous too. We don't want to go that way because there's snakes, whatever it is. But if we go that way, this path over here, I can't guarantee it, but if we go that way, then we have the highest likelihood of reaching the top of the mountain. But at no point along the way does the Sherpa ever carry anybody on their back. Everybody's responsible for getting themselves up there, up that mountain, and carrying their own stuff and their own baggage. And think baggage in every sense of that word, right? Everybody has to carry their own baggage. But once we get to the top of the mountain, you can look down with pride because you got up there with your own two legs. And to me, that's what franchising is you come in because you want to put this work on yourself. You want to challenge yourself. You want to do the work. You just don't want to do it alone. And that's what we're here for.
Andy, that's great. That analogy, I think, is so helpful for our clients. We often get clients that come in and say, why couldn't I do this on my own? And I think that Sherpa analysis, just comparing it to that makes sense. That's what you're getting when you buy a franchise. You've gone through, you did the Superman, you figured out all the different ways to make this business work. And now you're handing it over and they're coming in and they're executing on it. And I think that's really important. And I think that's so insightful for our listeners today. I think that in addition to seeing your business, the way you've built it up and how you continue to innovate and add multiple different models on so that you continue to have revenue all year long, that's the type of thing that our clients are looking for. They're looking for someone who's going to continue to build on that brand and make it better for them. So we really appreciate your insights today. This really deepens our understanding of how we think about franchising. And, Khris and I learned a lot today, and I'm sure our listeners will. So for those of you listening, if you're considering franchising as a potential path to business ownership, remember, there's no one size fits all that suits everyone. Even so, there's certainly a franchise out there for you that's perfect. To explore options and find your perfect match, please visit us at theperfectfranchise.com by clicking on Let's Talk. You can schedule time to speak with one of the consultants on our team. We look forward to connecting with you on our next episode. Until then, take care.